Well, greetings everyone. My name is Kevin Derrick. This is the Commercial Mastery Series, and this is commercial financing. Glad you're here. So we've started with learning about commercial real estate, the different sectors, how to choose an area, how to find the different deals, and then we really got into the good stuff, the property analysis, the cash flow, and it all led us down to that very important metric called net operating income, or NOI. Then we had a whole module on, all right, what happens underneath NOI? What happens when we start looking at what debt service is like? And you remember on the spotter how that would automatically give us what happens when I apply debt with certain terms at like 75% loan to value or 70% loan to value, and what happens when I add private equity in there as well? Well, that's all under the dominion of commercial financing. Now, there are some things that I definitely want to encourage you to do in not only understanding commercial financing, but in putting things to practice to really start using commercial financing for your business. So first, here's what I'd like you to do. When you have an opportunity, Google or whatever search engine you use that and try to find the small local banks that are in your area. Now, some of you may have a relationship with a national lender already and you know a person's name and you've done business with them before. That's fine. But I will say that our recommendation and much of the success that we have achieved has come through a small community lender. So I don't mean a national guy, I don't mean Chase or Bank of America, I don't necessarily mean a regional bank, but a small local bank that is maybe just in your state, maybe 5 branches, 15, 20. You know, there are new banks that are starting all of the time. It's those entities that I think that you will want to talk with, all right? And the reason is because those entities, those lenders are interested in the two things that you're interested in, all right? They're interested in building a relationship, which is exactly what you want to do, and they're interested in making quality investment decisions with local property, building the community, investing in the local area. And quite honestly, that's exactly what you're looking to do. In fact, you're much like that lender. You want to make sure that you are working with a quality asset with good numbers and with excellent potential. And so when you bring a good deal to a small local bank, as long as that's within the space of investing that they're interested in, they're probably going to look at that deal. All right? So that's the first thing to do. Make a list of those small local banks. The next thing that you'll want to do is actually pick up the phone and call. Now, don't press pause yet, all right? You got to hear me out here. I can help you with this. But what you'll do is you'll pick up the phone and you'll call. Hey, I'm Kevin, and I'm a part of the Turtle Investments group. We're real estate investors, and can I speak to someone in charge of your commercial lending? Normally it's going to be a vice president of commercial lending, someone like that. And so they may say, well, absolutely, Susan is our vice president of commercial, and let me transfer you over to her right now. That's the part where typically my students will bow their head, and as they're being transferred, they will pray the prayer, please God help this to go to voicemail, right? Please just let me leave a message. I don't want to talk to somebody live. I'm not ready yet. Well, you know what? Actually, you are. The person that asks the questions has the control. So you can actually control the conversation very easily by simply asking a question. Well, hello, Susan. Thanks for taking my call. I'm Kevin with Turtle Investments. We're real estate investors interested in just looking to some apartment complexes here locally. I'm just wondering, are you folks writing on apartments right now? Say, now wait a minute, Kevin, are you saying that that's all that you need to do is just to call and talk to a lender and ask that question, that's a really good place to start. And in fact, I didn't used to ask that question because most local banks would write on anything. But right now, that's a very good foundational question to ask. And so Susan might answer it like this. Well, we're really not doing any spec investing now. We're staying out of office and industrial, but we really do like retail, and we especially do like apartments. And so yes, Kevin, that definitely is something that we would look at. And so then I have space to be able to ask some additional questions. I might ask questions like, well, when you're looking to underwrite a loan like that, do you base it on the after repaired value, or what type of valuation do you typically use? I might ask, what type of cap rates are in the area? I might ask about vacancy on down the conversation. I'll ask about loan to value. Typically, my strategy though is just to ask 2 or 3 questions, and if it seems that that lender is interested in writing in the space that I'm interested in investing, then I will say, you know what, I would love to set up an appointment to spend 10, 15, 20 minutes with you and introduce myself face to face, tell you a little bit about my business and our goals, and see if that's a good place to start. They will say, yes, we'd really like to do that. They may also say, now yes, but we'd want to look at your financials, so please have your tax returns and your net worth statement and all of that ready. And I will say, okay, thanks a lot. Now, the Kevin Derrick rule is we're not going to give anybody anything initially until I meet with them. And the reason is because their objectives typically are tied to the numbers that I give to them. What I want to do is I want to create a relationship. So do they. All right, and I just have to help them a little bit. All right, the way that we're going to build a relationship is for me to sit across the desk from them in the conference room and get them talking about what I want to know. All right, tell them a little bit about me, but keep them talking, asking the questions so that I get the data that I need to make good decisions about whether this is a lender that I would like to pursue. All right. Say, well, isn't every lender somebody that we want to pursue? Not necessarily. If this is a lender who's not writing in the sector that we're interested in other words, maybe I just want to do multi-units and that's it. If they're only writing in another sector, there's really no need to do anything. You certainly can go in and meet with them and start a relationship, but at least right now, if they're not going to write on it, there's not a lot of reason to give them all of your financials, okay? So we have to treat that professionally, and I want to spend a little bit of time meeting them and seeing how they think, getting a feel for how they operate, and then if that's a fit for me and my business, at that time, I'll go ahead and give them financials. So, Kevin, aren't they going to be upset that you didn't bring financials in? Absolutely not. They will be excited that someone is sharp enough to get in there and to ask good questions. The last question that I typically ask is, well, based on what you've heard, are there other questions that I should be asking that I didn't ask yet? All right, and that gives them another opportunity to speak to what they may think is important after I've already given them an array of interrogatives about all of the things that I want. So make a list of the small local banks and then start calling them. Now, when I work with students one-on-one, all right, and I bet you have this question, all right, I actually help them make these appointments and we actually visit the banks together. I normally do all of the talking. I used to have a rule that we do 3 banks, and I do all of the talking in number 1. And number 2, I'd make them introduce themselves and give a little business background. And then in number 3, I was the silent partner, and I would make them do all of the talking. But quite honestly, I ended up doing most of the talking anyway. So now we hit 1 or 2 banks, 3 if they'd like it, if it fits well into what we're trying to do. And then I normally will do all of the talking. There are times when all of a students are very comfortable talking with a lender and they take off. You know what? That's what we want. And then the best thing that can happen is I leave town and now you've got to begin and do all of the dialogue. And that's when students really start to move along. So that gives you a good idea of what to target with commercial financing and some of the questions to ask when you actually meet with them. Now, you might say, it would really be great if you gave us a whole sheet of questions that we could ask a commercial lender. I just happen to have that. And so I'd be happy to give that to you. And in fact, all of my students get it when we work one-on-one, just so you've got a little cheat sheet, a little sales sheet, so to speak, so that when you're on the phone, you know what to ask. And you don't have to ask all of them, to be sure, but it at least gives you a good starting base. Now, one of the things that a commercial lender is going to want to analyze is the debt service coverage ratio, DSCR, or just DCR. So the debt coverage ratio, write that down if you would please. The ratio between the net operating income and the amount of debt that we're placing against the property. So when you think about the cash flow analysis, income minus expenses equals net operating income. Below that, to get to cash flows, we apply debt to that. It's called debt service, or ADS, annual debt service. It does not include taxes and insurance. Remember, those are expense items, but it does include principal and the amortization, or interest. All right, so any principal and interest is included in that annual debt service. Right? So if we look at what debt coverage ratio really is, when we get to NOI, the net operating income, let's say that my NOI is 100,000. All right? If my annual debt service is 75,000, then we can easily do math to figure out what our debt coverage ratio is going to be. You tremendous mathematicians, of course, probably have already figured it out. So take your HP 10B2 or whatever calculator, business calculator you happen to be using. With this math, you can use any calculator. We take 100,000 and we divide it by our debt service, and that's going to give us a measurement. So 100,000 divided by 75,000 is 1.33. That metric is the DCR. So if the DCR is 1.33, then what that is telling the lender is that they have that much space between how much debt is being placed against the property and the amount of income that the property is generating. Okay, so the next question is, great, I understand the relationship of debt coverage between annual debt service and NOI, but what does the debt coverage ratio need to be for most lenders? Well, it does vary a little bit, but most lenders look at about 1.2, 1.3, maybe 1.25. In tougher economies, sometimes that debt coverage ratio goes up. The higher the debt coverage ratio, the more space is needed between the amount of income that's being generated and the amount of debt being placed against the opportunity. All right? When debt coverage ratio diminishes, when it's lower, then that gives me an opportunity to be able to place a little bit more leverage against the property. This is one of the metrics, one of the primary metrics that the lender is going to use. Debt coverage ratio, and they'll also look at loan to value. All right? A lender is going to say, okay, well, we're very comfortable with 70 to 75%, but whenever we write, we do not go over that. We're very comfortable with 1.25, 1.3. We're not going to write any lower than 1.25. We love to see it at 1.3 or higher. Now, both of those elements that the lender shared with you are critical in your analysis, because then you know exactly what that lender can do for you. Automatically then, if you know that their debt coverage ratio likes to be 1.25 or higher, of course, 1.25, then you know if you have an opportunity like this would work with that lender. All right? And since my NOI is 100,000, we would value that at 1 million with a 10 cap, right? So if I'm buying it at a 10 cap for $1 million, this tells me that I need to buy it for $1 million, and then the lender will loan 70 to 75% of that. You can also work debt coverage ratio kind of from a back end strategy to figure out how much debt you can place against a property. All you need to know is your NOI and your annual debt service. Since your annual debt service is $75,000, you divide that by 12 and get your monthly. You enter that in your business calculator along with whatever terms the lender is giving you, like interest rate and the number of months, the term, like 20, 25, 30 years. When you enter that, the interest rate and the monthly payment and the time on your business calculator, or you use the T-bar, all you have to do is solve for present value, and it will actually tell you how much money the lender will lend you, will offer, will write based on the debt coverage ratio. Pretty cool, huh? So all of these metrics are critical for an investor to know. I've had people come to me and say, you know what, Kevin, I'm an investor, I'm not a lender. Well, you know what, in commercial, unless we understand how commercial financing works and how a lender operates, we're really holding ourselves back. But when you walk into a lender and you can talk about cap rate and you understand the importance of NOI, and you can ask them, okay, what vacancy rate would you like me to use in my cash flow analysis? What debt coverage ratio would you like me to use? What loan to value would you like me to use? 3 absolutely critical questions. When you ask those, now the lender is really starting to feel pretty good about that. Remember I mentioned in one of the modules that I've been in enough of these conversations through the years, there is one primary element that every lender is looking for in an investor. Now look, we know that lenders want to work with some people that have a decent net worth. You know, if you're broke and you're trying to take down a property, it's going to be a little bit tougher if you just go to a primary lender. We all understand that, right? But ultimately, all things being equal, all right, net worths, you know, being decent there, and you've got some income coming in, primarily a lender is looking for one thing, and I'll write it here. The lender for that small local bank that you're going to talk to, they're looking for you to be this, trustworthy. They want to know that you are committed to paying that debt service. They want to know that you're committed to the project. That's why a lot of lenders right now do want to see some skin in the game from borrowers. So many of us, and I'm sure that I've been guilty of this as well, have gone in with such full leverage with deals in the past that the lender is really taking all of the risk. We get in with full leverage, and then it's the investors and the lenders who are left when people aren't trustworthy, right? So they want to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that they can trust you. Well, how do you establish that? I mean, if you don't have tremendous experience and all of those different elements of a typical investor, you know, as far as information and experience and knowledge, how in the world are you going to build that in just a few minutes? Well, let me tell you. Do what I tell you to do and ask these questions. When you ask about ARV, when you ask about LTV, when you ask about the debt coverage ratio, when you let them know that you know how to do a cash flow analysis, folks, it won't take long but a few minutes for them to know that you've got a pretty good feel for what you're doing, all right, that you understand these metrics. So when I'm presenting these elements in these modules, this is the bread and butter of commercial real estate. This truly is the gold of commercial financing, all right? These are the elements of the underwriting process, and that's what we call it. When I ask a lender whether they're writing on apartments, what I'm asking them is, are you underwriting right now? Are you making loans in that particular space? Are you making loans, underwriting loans, writing loans on apartments? You know, these lenders have depository relationships with many people. In fact, they may ask you to have a depository relationship with them, and I just mean that you have deposited money, you have a checking account, savings account. Many of them have depository relationships with people and they're generating some income, but banks make money, okay? They look nice and have fancy brick buildings because they make a lot of money from their amortization schedules, usury, interest. They make money writing loans. And so when you stop and think about it, ultimately the bank actually wants to do this. The bank wants to lend on good opportunities. You just have to prove to them that you know that it is a good opportunity and bring good opportunities to them. That's creating tremendous profit for you and the lender. Remember, the lender's looking at this commercial opportunity as an investment just like you are. So, know their debt coverage ratio. If this opportunity fits the debt coverage ratio, good opportunity. Does it work with a loan to value? All right. If it's working with these metrics of underwriting, then you should present it and create the relationship. Now, one last thing that I want to share with you about commercial real estate, and you totally have to write this down. All right. Write this down, please, and never ever forget it. It is this, that in commercial financing, here you go, these three words, everything is negotiable. Everything is negotiable. The what and the where, all right? It's the amount, the loan to values. You say, well, wait a minute, Kevin, you just said that I should ask them the loan to value. Absolutely. And they'll probably give you a range because they don't know you. In fact, sometimes I'll even preface my questions with the lender this way, and I'll say, you know, I know everything really is based on relationship and we don't know each other yet, but I'm just asking these questions so I have a basic metric to use in my cash flow analysis. And I think they appreciate that because, you know, if they have someone that they've worked with for years, we can negotiate, all right? It's not only the what, but it's the when. We can negotiate during the contract, we can adjust rates, we can do lots of different things. So in commercial real estate, whether it's debt coverage, is it possible for them to make you have a 1.3 but somebody else a 1.2? Sure it is. Why? Because everything's negotiable. Now you may get a 70% loan to value, but they may loan to me at 80%. Why? Because everything is negotiable. Know that and you will do well with commercial financing. So you've got your homework now, all right? Make that list of commercial lenders and then make those calls. Write down a few questions that you can ask, talk to lenders, create relationships. Now's a good time. Head to the website, spend a few minutes checking out the opportunity to work with me. Remember, I'm a mentor, I'm a coach. I can do this with you one-on-one. Do it a couple times a month. We prep you, we get you ready to go. We figure out what works for you. We get you looking for properties. We make contacts. We get our 3-day agenda so that when I'm there, it can be boom, boom, boom. We make it profitable. We make it practical. And we perform. We make you some money. Check it out today. We'll see you in the next module. Thanks for being with us for the commercial financing session.